So there it is, one of the first close to retail pictures of what we think is an RTX 4090. This image I got from WCF Tech. Now, we don't know if it's completely real or not, but we've seen these before a major GPU release. Let's talk about what exactly is going on with this GPU, when's it coming, what we know about the 4090. Of course, even if you're not in the market for the 4090, it's going to be the first GPU that's going to come out from RTX 4000 Ada Lovelace. So you might as well learn all you can about it, so that way you know how the other GPUs are going to be in the series, like the 4080 and the 4070. So first, let's talk about visually what we see here. This looks like a massive GPU, a massive 4-slot GPU. For those of you that saw the RTX 3090 Ti, you'll notice that that GPU got pretty thick as well. It's in fact one of the biggest GPUs that we've ever seen. Now, this 4090 is going to share a lot of things with the 3090 Ti, including the VRAM, the same bandwidth, even a very similar layout. Of course, it's going to be, we assume, much more powerful than an RTX 3090 Ti, but still, you can look at the 3090 Ti as almost like a mini version of this, even though it's weird saying that the fastest GPU officially out now is a mini version of anything, but there you have it. Compared to a next generation 4090, certainly it's gonna not be in the same category. Still a great GPU, but just not in the same category. So Zotac, I know it's not going to be the coolest brand to see. I mean, some people prefer EVGA, Asus, or my favorite, the Nvidia Founders Edition. Those are some of the best looking GPUs in my opinion, as well as with the best build quality. Performance wise, I don't know. The PCBs are pretty good on the Founders Edition, but sometimes out of the box, you'll get better thermals from something like, a 4013, maybe some of the Asus GPUs. But anyway, Zotac amp, there it is, the 4090. Looks a little bit weird, to be honest. It's a very curvy GPU. We're used to seeing a lot more angles. No matter if the GPU is lower end or higher end, you're going to see more squared off rectangular angles. This GPU looks certainly very, very curvy. Aside from the fact that it is a very, very thick GPU, that's something else that we can take away from this. So, of course, it's going to be sporting the newer, Nvidia power connectors as well. And for a 4090, we're assuming, we don't know yet, but most likely it may end around 450 watt TDP for the power draw, which is similar to the 3090 Ti. Now, 450 watt TDP we're expecting for the Founders Edition, but once again, much like the 3090 Ti has 500 plus watt TDP GPUs like from EVGA, 4013, and maybe the Asus Strix, you can also expect some of these GPUs that are overclocked a little bit more compared to the Founders Edition to have perhaps over 500 watts, which is, while nothing new, definitely starting to stress the power supplies and heating within the system. It's not only the power draw that you have to be concerned with here, it's also going to be your case airflow, heat, everything else, not to mention the components that you're going to need to power something like this. CPU is important, but if you're going to be playing at 4K and above, not nearly as important as a GPU itself. Of course, the GPU will be the bottleneck in things like 8K and 4K, but if you want to do ultra wide or 1440p and below, of course, the very fast CPU is also going to be important. So we've certainly seen some weird GPU designs before. This one certainly, not that it takes the cake, but certainly it's a pretty weird design. Like I said, very curvy. Not too sure what I think of it. I think as other GPUs come out for the 4000 series, we're probably going to see more of what we're used to. Remember, while I don't think this is going to be a trend necessarily across all the 4000 series GPUs, it's possible if these companies had to design new coolers for the RTX 4090. Remember, they love reusing the same coolers for like everything. I've seen, some 3090s that have a similar cooler to a 3080 Ti, 3080, even down to a 3070 Ti. They'll share a lot of the same components. Sometimes they may have, maybe one less fan or a couple things may be different. Other times it's going to be nearly identical to the really high-end GPUs and a couple of tiers below. So I guess that's like a cost-cutting measure. They love sharing the similar designs. And of course, it might be overkill for the smaller GPU, but maybe just enough for the bigger one. Sometimes it may not be enough at all, like we found out with the RTX 3090 VRAM temperatures with the bad thermal pads out of the factory for many GPUs. Those coolers just were not sufficient to cool them. That's why I think the 3090 Ti certainly was a big improvement, because a lot of those coolers are not only thicker, the VRAM configuration was generally better for thermals. So we may see a lot of these companies for the 4090 at least that's supposed to be a lot beefier and have much thicker 3 to 4 slot coolers. We could see them actually innovate a little bit and not copy that design across the board. I can't see them putting a 4 slot cooler on like a 4070. It wouldn't make sense for the tier of GPU that is, even if a 4070 is going to be almost as powerful as like a 3080 Ti. I really don't think that it's going to necessarily dictate that it has the cooler of a 4090. We expect the 4090 to be the best GPU, at least initially. So seeing a new innovative cooler, that's certainly going to be very cool, if I can use that word again. Now, we're going to have to see what comes out from EVGA and Asus, and typically the ones that are most popular with gamers, at least aesthetically, maybe some of the companies because of their warranties like EVGA and things like that. So certainly we're going to have to see if their design is going to be similar to what it was for the 3090 Ti, or since they might have to have a 4 slot and a brand new cooler design for the huge power of the 4090, maybe they're going to have to, change things up a little bit. But considering that it is pretty close in power to the 3090 Ti, they may just try to reuse those coolers again, which would be a little bit of a shame because every GPU generation just stays looking really a little bit too similar, I think. So certainly it is nice to have a bit of a difference. That's why I like the Nvidia's Founder Edition, even if sometimes it wasn't as great thermally as some of the other GPUs. It certainly was designed aesthetically very well, and build quality was certainly very high. Now, of course, what has also been leaked previously is sort of the font design of this GPU. It does seem very different than the RTX 3000 series. You can see the font just looks a little bit softer. It's not quite as angular. It almost looks fake in these images, actually. If I saw this and I didn't know that they may be thinking of some type of change, I would think these images are clearly fake. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. I mean, they could still certainly be fake. It would make sense with a possible announcement later this month about RTX 4000, and potentially coming out in October. The 4090 would be the first GPU, so it would make sense to start seeing them in the wild in production and things like that. And then the 4080 potentially maybe might come out something like November. And then this year, if it does come out, the 4070 could be anywhere from November to December to even early on in the year. Remember, I don't even know if Nvidia is going to know exactly when these GPUs are coming out. Things have been changing very quickly depending on the macroeconomic conditions, the GPU market. They could decide to push things into 2023 and maybe just release a 4090. Who knows what's going to happen? What we know is that the 4090 most likely will come very soon, and by soon we think October, possibly November. That's what we've been seeing across sort of the spectrum of these type of leaks. So the font aside, which I think it looks a little funny, I don't know if there's something really wrong with the font and the design of the RTX 3000 series. By that I mean the way the numbers are lettered and the other wording certainly looks a little bit different right now. I'm not sure I really like it, especially in conjunction with this sort of weird curvy Zotac GPU. I'd have to see it on maybe a Founders Edition or an EVGA or an Asus 4090, so I can judge if it's really aesthetically that much better, and it may take some time for it to sort of grow on us and we get used to it. But once again, the font is going to be the least of our worries. We're going to be more worried about the initial price, sort of the availability, and the performance against the previous generation. Those are all things I plan to cover on the channel as we know more about them. Right now, I'm thinking the 4090 anywhere from $1499 to $1999. That would make the most sense compared to what we had previously. So hopefully it doesn't come in too expensive, and hopefully it's actually available compared to RTX 3000, which likely is still going to be sold right next to it. Now, let's see what happens if we get more leaks. Remember to stay subscribed. Anything that I learned, I'll certainly pass on to you guys. Really excited to see what these new GPUs offer, especially the 4090 and whatever AMD with RDNA 3 may be bringing to the table. So we're going to keep an eye on it and see what happens. Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.